Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast, the podcast where we discuss marketing and business tips to help assist you on your business journey. I'm your host, Shannon, Penji's Partnership Coordinator, and I'm joined here today with a very special guest, Kevin Daisey from Array Digital. Thank you so much for joining me, Kevin.
Hello, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Thank you. So, could you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Anything that you think would be relevant on your journey up to where you are now and what you're doing now?
I'll try to keep it short, but yeah, my name is Kevin Daisey. Actually, I'm in 3 marketing agencies with some partners. But long story short, took an HTML class in like 6th grade, random like side class, and that was back in I don't even know 96 or something like that. Anyway, long story short, when I was 23. I kind of took the plunge, left a corporate job, and started my own freelance website design company, and grew that to a local marketing agency doing SEO and web development design, and just was the kind of the local provider, if you will. Built a good reputation, built up a team with an office, and then fast forward to 2017. Rebranded, merged with another agency, if you will, and niched into the legal industry. So working with law firms and focused nationally instead of locally. So a lot of change in there, but and then since then we've started 2 other agencies in different verticals and niches, and so Array is still our baby, if you will, but we've kind of perfected the model a little bit and scaled it out. So
Sweet. So I love how you said long story short and then you started with 6th grade. I think that's hysterical.
I still kept it pretty short, right?
He's still a little bite-sized. Yeah, no, I agree. But how did you end up on law firms? Because I think that's that's a very specific niche, especially if you were used to local and now you're going national as well. It seems like if you're going very specific and also going national, it has to be something that you're very good at. So I would, how did you get into that space?
That's a good question. It wasn't by accident necessarily, so we took time to think about it. Locally we had law firm clients from when I started my own. I think when I started my own on my own, it was like I think that's actually 2006. I was 23. And so I had some law firm clients all the way back, but there was no design to that. It was HVAC clients and restaurants and law firms and, just a local network that I had. And so when it came down to niching, we joined some masterminds, and all these other folks are like, you need to niche and focus. And we kept getting beat over the head with that concept for a long time.
Yeah.
And so
there are very strong opinions in the niching down area for agencies.
Yeah. And we'd bring on like a mortgage company and we don't understand the rules of, the website and the copy and what you can say and you can't say. And we just we weren't growing enough and scaling enough. And so we're like, okay, we need to do something different. And so we just like, okay, let's niche. How do we pick a niche? And so what we did is we temporarily categorized. We didn't niche. So we were like, okay, law firms, we have some of those. Those make sense. They spend money. We had a lot of HVAC companies, so home services. We were like, okay, that makes sense. And medical. So we had, dentist and orthodontist and stuff like that. So we kind of made those 3 categories, and we tried to be in all 3.
Mm-hmm.
Which is not niching at all.
I mean, you're getting closer because you still have 3 categories instead of everything.
So that's how we started, and then we realized that okay, this isn't really niching and focusing. And so what we did is we decided through trial error and looking at data and stuff like that we would pick legal for Array Digital, and almost simultaneously we started another agency called Arrival Digital. Which was going to be all HVAC clients. And so we kind of did that. And then since then, we started more of a medical healthcare agency. But So it came down to a lot of things: revenue, potential, economic impacts. COVID was happened not too long
Yeah.
after that, and so we know retail was not a good place to be. So at the time, and so we had to pick something. So I would say we just kind of were like, let's pick legal for this, and HVAC over here, and that's gone very well for us. So legal is very hard, probably the most challenging. We do a lot of SEO and content, like building things like that. So it's a very competitive space. And we knew, Ray was kind of like I guess, the premier team, if you will, versus the HVAC team. We started, we were able to do it a different way. So Ray took the hard one, and that's where we're at. So it's definitely a different animal for sure.
It's funny to settle on those three because specifically law and medical are, I would say, the hardest of the niches. I've talked extensively with some medical niche agencies, and with HIPAA laws and being HIPAA client and all of these different elements that I didn't even consider when creating a website or doing SEO, it sounds like a whole different animal in relation to so many other niches in which you could choose. So it's interesting that you chose the most difficult of them, but it makes sense because I mean, I would say that maybe it's less saturated of a market at the time, probably because you have to be such an expert in the field.
Yeah, I mean, I think the barrier to entry is a little more. Again, if my HVAC agency team or employees are listening, it just is easier. That's the way it is. It's easier to sign a client. It's easier to do the work. It's easier to rank. It's easier to do a lot of things. So it's just not the same. I think. Also legal, yeah, legal. You have, let's say personal injury or criminal defense, whatever. It doesn't matter. But you have ABA guidelines per state, and then you have the law, and that's per state or federal, and that's just the content on the website and what you say, what you don't say. American Bar Association has guidelines for each state and national, so it's a lot to have to check, and you have to get approval by every attorney, through a process to like post a blog. I mean, that's how it should be done. Not everyone does that.
Mm.
But I would say there's in the legal industry where it's much harder. So you're just your processes have to be tight. Your QA has got to be tight. But again, there's only a handful of really good agencies out there, I believe, and there's a lot of charlatans, a lot of folks that are you just kind of get into it, but they can get stopped pretty quickly by have those issues that you have to navigate. So.
I can completely understand that. That's something that I hear very often, which is so funny because of the amount of interviews that I've had. I have to be probably the probability of someone that I talk to being one of those agencies is possible. But I hear so many times throughout the podcast of people having clients come to them and say, I've been burned by so and so. Like I'm wary of even going to another agency because of my past experiences, and that is very disheartening here in the space because it's not something that should really happen.
Yeah, that's something I hear all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, I still play the role of the face of the business, business development, if you will. So most, firms reach out to me through, either they listen to me on my podcast or, at events and conferences or whatever. But so I still field those and talk to them, and they always come to me like, "Yeah, this will be my 5th time, new agency." They don't want commitment. They're burned. They don't believe what you're going to do is, what you say you're going to do. And they're almost prepared for failure again. Like that's how they talk. I know I need to do this. I was trying not to do this. I tried to hire in-house, and then my coaches or whoever they're talking to are like, "Yeah, you have to bring an agency in," and they don't want to, but they feel they have to. And so they're just expecting disappointment.
Failure. Yeah.
It's like,
It's sad. It's really
it's
sad.
that bad. It's bad. It's bad.
Hey, it's bad and it's sad, but it's good to know that you're the final line for them. Like it's good to know that you can be that person that can kind of, swoop in and save them, so to speak. It is
We try.
something. Yeah, exactly. Sometimes I think that it's also being introspective enough to realize if maybe you're the problem and not the agencies as well, but that's a whole different conversation.
Well, I mean, you kind of have to, that's what I've tried to do well is that's part of my questions. Like when I'm talking to firms, like, okay, how many agencies have you worked with?
Mm-hmm.
What were your relationships like with them? What was your involvement with them? Did you meet with them often, or did you just hope they took care of everything with a magic wand? And so you start to kind of see like, who's the problem here? And then what about intake in the law firm is phone answering and messages, like how fast are they getting back to people? Those more leads is not always the solution. It's usually that'll just cause more problems. So, so I think, the biggest thing that I could say if you're an agency out there or what makes us different is asking all those questions to really figure out, where the law firm is or any client, where they are, sophistication level with marketing and digital and whatever you do, and then what their relationships are like with their vendors or whoever. And so doesn't mean you can't sign them, but you at least have a better picture and you can make, hey, we work better if you're responsive. You give us what we need. You meet with us, and we're constructive together. And you'll get some clients that are just like not interested in that at all because they're like, "Well, I'm busy. I don't want to talk to you all. I have a person that can do that for you." At least you kind of know where you are, and then you make the decision. Is this a good fit or not? And then the other part is budget. Like they're like, "Hey, I want to be competitive in this market." And you can be like, this is not possible. And so, has anyone told them that? I don't know. But it just might not be possible to be effective with what they have budget wise. So
yeah, I think there's definitely this educational process that you kind of go through with potential clients and even afterwards, because I think that a lot of clients come to agencies having no idea what's really wrong. They think they know, or they're coming to you because they don't know at all and they're being realistic of the fact that they do not know, which is a good start at least if they're willing to admit that. But it is trying to, you're not only, doing all these services for them, but also trying to pinpoint the problem that they're having in the first place that they need to come to you. Because like scaling is fine. That's like something that probably most people want to be able to do for their business, but that's not always like the main issue, or like why they're not capable of doing that themselves is a lot of the time why they come to agencies, and they're not realizing that maybe it's like a team on their staff that's a problem. Like for your example that you gave of with leads, like cool, you're getting in a bunch of leads. Are they good leads? Are they being responsive to these leads? Are they even like converting them? That's something that's truly very important that I think people don't understand, is volume does not equal sales.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's so many things to kind of get through. And, one day you're like, what, we're trying to sign new clients, but the other side, we're trying to do it right, educate and understand where they are, which I think is very important. So, so our sales cycle is not super fast, and it's, not every single firm that wants to work with us makes sense. So, as I own a agency, multiple agencies, we have over 50 employees. I've been in business a long time. We take a business perspective on everything. So that's why we don't just talk about marketing and cut the line there. It's all kinds of questions about the firm. What's their revenue? What's their average case size? What's, their sales conversion rate? What's, how's their business run? Is it, a lawyer running around like crazy with no time, or is it a truly like run like a business with, processes, KPIs, intake, data, dashboards, all that good stuff? And they're totally two different types of client, so I think asking the hard questions and figuring that stuff out is important to understand if this is going to be a good fit, how this is going to go. Because I don't want to sign a client that wants to not be a client 6 months from now or a year from now. So
Yeah, you want to understand that they're a good fit. And even speaking to that and kind of going deeper into niching down, which is something that I think a lot of people don't talk about specifically in that process, is how does it kind of work and feel to go from kind of saying yes to a lot more people and then saying no a lot more? Like, how does that change things? How did you build a structure of, saying more to no to more people, and um being able to adjust to that change? Because I'm sure it must be a little disappointing, like even if you think you'd work well with a client, but they're not necessarily in that space anymore.
yeah, well, I would say this. Coming in and niching originally, we thought we had to say no to everybody. Just like we have to just cold turkey, boom. And in reality, you don't have to do that. You want all your marketing, all your messaging, everything to be to that one particular person, niche, whatever. So if in this case, if it's law firm owners, like you can get down to that, so you don't have to be law firms. Like, is it marketers in law firms or is it the owners themselves? Like, who's your best client? So you want to have messages that talks only to that specific niche. But if you have someone else reach out that's still a good fit, you think you can help them, you can still take on that work. You just don't want to communicate that or use them as a testimonial when I keep, So I will say you can still pick on other work if it makes sense, because you also have to survive and you have to be able to have revenue.
Yeah.
For us, now that we have 3 agencies, though, I might just refer it to another one of my agencies and say, "Oh, HVAC company wants to work with us. Congratulations, we own an HVAC company." And that HVAC company is now expanded to be like electrical, plumbing, some home services, a lot of other categories. So now we have these other buckets to work with. But you definitely say no more. I've always been a yes kind of guy, and want to help people out, and that doesn't always serve you well. So saying no is like the best. That's the best freedom you could have in an agency, is be like, we're not a fit, or I have another firm over here that's they probably want me to be working with you because you're close to their market. I think I'll refer you to someone else, and that's rewarding.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And that's why it's good to have other relationships with other agency owners. I know lots of agency owners in all the different verticals. And so it's good to say, hey, I got a client that would be a great fit for you because you understand their agency and how they operate. And just listening to the prospect, you can say, okay, we're not a fit, but I think this other agency would be a great fit.
Yeah,
So.
creating those connections is something that's really important in the agency world as well. And I think it also shows that you have respect for yourself and also your potential clients or just people who are reaching out to you, because you can understand that you're not a good fit in whatever way that may be, but also that, you still want them to, have a good experience, just it might not be with you, which is, a little sucky to say and admit, but it's also, if it's good for you in the long run, it's not, you don't have a customer or a client that's kind of a pain, not necessarily because they're a pain, but just because they're not a proper fit for your agency doesn't mean that they can't be for another.
Yeah, yeah. And then here's the thing, people are in different places. I think, if you're like a freelancer by yourself and you take on a client that's not a fit, you're dealing with it and you're seeing it firsthand and think, but now it's like my team has to deal with it, and they come back to me and go, hey, what, why the hell did we bring on this client? So it's things to think about. I think it depends on where you're at. If you're in scale mode, growth mode, and you bring your margins down because you're trying to scale and grow, you might take on some clients that maybe are not the perfect fit, but you're doing the best you can. I think if you're in a comfortable place with good margins and a good base of clients, saying no is a lot easier. So building your agency properly and having systems in place and being in a good comfortable place allows you to make better decisions, and saying no is a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. I don't blame the yes men who just started an agency. I think that at that point you kind of have to say yes to more people than you really want to, and you kind of have to struggle through some maybe more difficult clients because you need to keep your revenue up, and that's completely understandable. I think that almost everyone wants to get to a place where they can say no, and I think it's at a detriment to them when they get to a place where they can say no but don't say no. And I think that's like the issue, I guess, when you get to that place where you have teams that are counting on you and have other clients to worry about and have a bigger workload, but they're focusing on someone that if you said no, maybe would have been better for everyone involved.
Yeah, and it still happens. It's I think it's sometimes we're trying to help someone and be like, hey, like this one might be tough or tight, but I think we can help them. And bring other people in, but sometimes we make a decision to say, let's see if we can help them. But and some work out where you're like, wow, this is like we've crushed it for them. They're doing well.
Mhm.
They'll listen to us, but it's not always going to be the case. So I like those success stories where you took like a wounded, animal and helped them heal, but it's unrealistic to think that's going to happen every time. So
Yeah, there's risks that you take when accepting clients that you're like, maybe, but like it could be really great if, we did what we really want to do with them. But sometimes it doesn't always work out that way. But I mean, if you're not taking those kinds of risks, then you don't, get that kind of reward either. So I think that sometimes it's it's a balancing act. I think all of the marketing world is kind of taking risks constantly. Hopefully not a detriment to your client, but just as a normal way of working in the space.
yep, 100%.
So speaking of your teams, you built a lot of strong systems in your agency. Do you have like, maybe if I'm phrasing this right, like an unattractive process that you think actually changed something really critical in any of these agencies, like something that maybe was really difficult to implement but something that was worthwhile?
Well, I will say, first off, kudos to like my business partner and other folks on my team that are good at process and development. I'm not. So I'm a visionary type. Ideas, not organized myself, but that's why I get other people to do stuff. But
I think
yeah,
that's a very similar dynamic between partners, is the visionary and then the person that puts the vision to life.
yeah, my partner's a visionary too, but he's got the analytical side and the process and tasking, and I just don't have that. So we kind of have like two visionaries, if you will. But I'm definitely way more of just a big idea kind of guy. Um, so one of the things, let's see. So one is employee handbooks, and for each department, for each job description, like building out each of those things, which is daunting and not fun, but it's like something we had to implement just so we have clarity across the board.
Mhm.
So to me, most of the processes they're not fun, they're not pretty, and it's not something you want to do until you see it fleshed out, until you see it working, and that's when it's like, okay, wow, like why did we not do this before? So that's one of the things. I think other than that, it's we make each person within their own role update their processes. Responsible for building out the process if it's a new role or a new position, and that's just something we've worked into like the culture here. That you follow the process, but you update the processes. You bring in new processes. If you know something that we don't know, you bring that to the company to build out. And that's if you're not a fit because you don't want to share or you want to hold on your own. Transparency is one of our core values. So we need team members that are going to help grow us and scale us and hire people underneath them. So, that's just kind of worked into everything here. As far as one process, I don't know really. I don't really know which one, but other than just like doing like um, again, the handbooks and job descriptions, it's just not a sexy one.
Yeah, it's definitely not fun having to create all of that, especially from scratch, or especially for maybe a new position that hasn't been filled before. I
Yeah.
do like the element of, including the people that are in that position to be able to update it, because I do think that there are a lot of outdated job descriptions, for lack of better phrasing, that, there's expectations of you that are not updated when you sign on to something, or that you start being included in something. And it's very hard for you to get people up to date when you don't have that all accounted for. But I
Yeah, well, I think it's
do.
also, you know, I'm thinking years ago, like it's not really looked at again. It's just like, hey, your job is this, and then you're just kind of doing your thing, but that's kind of forgotten about and put away. It's not like really a living thing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
and now we get, we have annual reviews, and those are looked at quarterly, like with a plan. We do one-on-ones with every team member every single week, and just those things are always looked at. Hey, is your role changing? Do we need to update the job description? And that's, again, it's a living kind of document at this point. So
No, I like that. And I think that if you value transparency, then constantly having those discussions with your employees is something that is really crucial and vital to making sure that that remains, like, everything that is part of this process remains to be seen. And that is important to explain to your clients, like, how things are happening, if they're ever, like, wondering. I think there's a lot of agencies, and I think maybe the biggest problem with some people who consider themselves to be burned by agencies is a lack of transparency. And if you know
yeah,
if you're having these conversations consistently with everyone on your staff and knowing exactly, what they're doing, and maybe what needs to be changed in what they're doing, then you're able to also convey that clearly to your client as well when they're maybe asking, or very
yeah,
maybe even critical of time.
yeah. I think every client has they have the what's it buyer's remorse, or a thought of, did I make the right decision? Are they doing what they're
Yeah.
supposed to be doing? So we have clients all the time, like, you know, what are you? They've been burned multiple times, but like, tell me what you all did last month. And it's like, well, we have Asana, we have tasking, we have projects, we have every single thing we do is logged and checked off. So, like, oh, okay, here you go.
Yep.
Here's everything. How many agencies could do that? I don't know. But for us, it's very easy. It's very clear, transparent, and we can tell them everything. And if we do something wrong or we mess something up, then we do what's called a lessons learned, which is a deep dive with whatever team members involved, all the email communications, all the log phone calls. We log, notes in HubSpot and everything, right? So we can literally put that together and say, all right, here's what happened. Here's what we found. We're not trying to point out a person, but we just say, and here's what we've updated our process to fix that from ever happening again. And that gets us out of hot water a lot, because the client's like, oh, wow, okay, like, this is fine. We appreciate all the effort, and that you've changed your process to make sure it doesn't happen again. They're not used to getting that kind of response. It's usually,
Hmm.
you know, defensiveness, or, you know, trying to show them something that's to make up for no data at all. Like, I don't have anything to show you, so we're just gonna put together something. So yeah, if you're truly being transparent and tracking everything, it's pretty easy to figure out the issue, or to own up to it and say, ah, here's what we did wrong, and here's how we won't do that again.
Yeah, I think that the worst thing that clients do not want to hear is, I messed up and I don't know how to fix it. Or I messed up but I don't know what I did. It's just not yielding the results. And I don't think anyone ever wants to hear that, especially if they're, using a service, which is ultimately what agencies are. And that's not something that they want to Like they're looking and trusting you to be able to get something done. And of course, marketing, as mentioned earlier, is somewhat of a gamble. Sometimes there's obviously so many proven theories and, ways of doing something, but it's not always the same for every client. And things can go wrong even if you're doing everything right. And to be able to see and adjust to that and show a client that you want to do differently and that exactly what went wrong the first time is, I think, all that most of them want to see. Of course, there's going to be a disgruntled client here and there that won't understand that that's kind of part of the process. And honestly, sometimes you don't blame them either, because maybe they've just been burned so many times that they just don't trust when something goes wrong at all.
Yeah, like so they're looking for failure, right?
Yes,
So I
exactly.
think it's something I'm always trying to improve, but in the beginning process of, or your sales process, whatever, that is where you can lay all the expectations and groundwork and mention some of that stuff. You can tell a story like, hey, we had this one client this one time, we did everything here, blah blah, and this wasn't getting the result we expected, and here's what we did to pivot or change that. Sticking to a scope of work. Sometimes you might say, hey, we were going to do this service which we thought would be viable in your market, and it's just not panned out, so we're going to make a pivot, we're going to make a change. Versus just on autopilot for a year and then find out, yeah, this hasn't worked.
Yeah.
So
People really hate that.
that's not good. So
Yeah.
and here's, like, I'll give some examples real quick. Like Google local service ads, if you're familiar with those don't even sometimes work at all for law firms in certain markets,
Mm.
even with 10, 15, 20 grand a month in spend, and we can't make it work. Like, it's just not possible. So they're very limited in management anyway. Google Ads, you can do forecasts, but it might end up being $400 or $500 a click for some legal verticals, and their budget might not be able to be effective enough to give them a ROI. So it's you go in with the data you have, the best plan you have, and that might not end up being effective. And then Google SEO, AI search is just changing every day. So it's you're doing what you think is gonna be best, and you got to stay on top of it, pivot. You're not always gonna have. I always tell clients, up to the right is not always gonna be sustainable. Like, it's when you come down and how you adjust to go back up is the agency you want to look for.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Versus the one that
something
goes, I
that
don't know why we're going down, and I have no clue.
you don't ever want to see that.
And you don't have 100% clue because it's Google and they're not going to tell you. But
Yeah.
you have to have that kind of control to be like, okay, I know it's not all this, so there's some new change. We're researching it, and we're implementing some change, and then we'll go across all our clients once we figure it out. So
Yeah, it's all experimenting, as I think, as long as you're transparent and clients are relatively happy with that. Again, we mentioned the possible disgruntled client, but other than that, I think most people just want to see what you're doing and making sure that you're doing what you're saying you're doing. And I think that, unfortunately, there's a lot of agencies that don't do that. And that's really sad to see, because I think clients deserve that. That's why they're putting money into a service and trusting you with what you're doing. Speaking
yeah,
of,
100%.
so to close out, since we're a little over time, what do you think? Speaking of like people being burned by agencies, whatever it may be, what do you think is a marketing belief that you think is completely outdated, but is something that is preached still in the marketing space?
I will say, okay. Well, I'll say not. I'm thinking from the client side. So what the client's
That's fine
perspective
too.
is. Well, so we do a lot of SEO, so organic. So this is content, um, links, Google, but now AI search as well. But um, I think a lot of misconception. I think, and a lot of agencies hide behind this, is that all that stuff, so SEO or whatever, is like this magical thing that they know they have to do and keep pumping money into. but an agency can easily just be like, well, it's Google, so we don't, we just got to keep going, and it's bad right now, but that's just what it is. And so they can hide behind a lot of this, like the line item for SEO in a proposal is you can hide a lot of stuff in there, or we're doing nothing for the most part, and the client doesn't know. And a lot of agencies don't know how to actually do it properly. So many do it, but they don't really understand it. So I just think the biggest thing there is that you can't control it. You don't know how to affect it. You don't, agencies don't know how to really do it, and they just hide behind the fact that it's Google.
It's unpredictable.
And you got to just please.
Yeah.
You just have to please Google and keep doing the things that we used to do. And so, coming from the people I hang out with, it's like I know what works. I know it's effective. And most agencies are still doing the same old tactics, keyword stuff, long form content, stuff like that. And so the old way of doing SEO is just, it's still similar, but it's just not the same. So I just see like there's so many misconceptions there on how it should be done and if it's still effective at all. Google or SEO is still a massive part, and it still works. And AI is built on the same principles. So
yeah,
if you're helping the customer, helping the client get the right information, you're going to win on all platforms.
I completely agree. I think that there has been a lot of debate recently over if SEO is dead or not. I hear that phrase a lot.
Yeah.
I definitively do not believe that it is. And I've had a lot of conversations about that. I think I see it on LinkedIn more than anyone actually admits it to my face that it's dead. I don't think anyone's really willing to say it with their chest because I don't think that they really truly believe that it's true. I think it's just that it's not working necessarily in the same way it was. And I think that's why people think it's dead, because they're just not adjusting to the time of what they need to do differently with SEO.
Well, yeah. So I know we're over time a little bit, but a client might come to me like, oh, that doesn't work anymore, so I'm not going to do that. Or Google ads never worked for me the first time I tried it, so I never want to do those again. So that's definitely the wrong way to come into it. And for me, when I tell people, it's like SEO is everything about you. So don't think about SEO as a service or just content on your website or just your website or just backlinks. It's literally anything that's ever said about you or your firm anywhere that's can be digitally obtained, right? So LinkedIn, posts, articles, news, your website, blogs, articles, other articles, digital PR, reviews, Facebook, anything and everything. That is SEO. So you hire an agency that can maybe help with pieces of that, but your company or law firm or whatever kind of company you are, you have a massive piece of that you have to control and work on. It's your brand. It's everything. So I think SEO is just like this paid service that you get, and it's much more than that. And so you flip that over again to like AI. When I search ChatGPT and say, hey, what's the best law firm marketing agency? Like that's what people are doing now, right? Well, it's the same principles. It's looking for, well, who should I put number one based on information that's out there? So it's still SEO, and it's still going to be around for a long time. AI wouldn't work well if it was all paid ads. Google won't work if it's all paid ads. It has to have information provided somewhere, and that's what SEO is going to remain to be.
Yeah, I think it's maybe that the biggest misconception is just surrounding SEO entirely, of like what it actually is. I completely agree with you, because I think that so many things worked for a really long time, but for the wrong reasons. And now that, for example, like many, a bunch of blog articles or whatever it may be being linked, like HubSpot specifically being one of the top, like a top for known to be the top for SEO, but then recently kind of realizing that their strategy that they preached for so long doesn't necessarily work in the same way now, because it wasn't necessarily building upon actual information, but more of, spreading like links. And
The
so
list, they do all the list pages and stuff like that. Yeah.
exactly. And I think that it's not necessarily that, oh, SEO is dead, or, oh, it's not necessarily working in the same way it was before. I think it's that these strategies weren't foolproof. They were just something that worked at that time. And it was kind of almost tricking, these services, rather than actually doing that work of like creating informative, well-clicked content. And I think that was kind of at a detriment to all of these places. And I think that's why people have this misconception that it doesn't work anymore, but it's really just that they weren't doing it right from the start.
And the thing is, you have to go get rid of all that content and put out helpful content that's going to work. And so, does anyone want to go through that pain and challenge and
No.
expense? So it still works. It's just what you have out there is not going to work. So you have to change. And I guess the pro tip would be for anyone that's, I don't know, we're just talking about SEO, but this is a big part of what we do, is pro tip is write good, useful, helpful content, not written by AI directly. Like, you can use AI to help, but make it helpful to the client, to the end user. Then you're going to do well. And don't trick Google. If you think you're tricking Google, you've already started on the wrong foot. If you're trying to trick trick ChatGPT or AI, they're going to catch up with that and try to get rid of that content. So it could be a temporary solution, but where you want to be 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and lose all that. So, which could put you out of business, depending on your lead sources.
Yeah, no, I think that's a beautifully I don't know if I should say ominous note to end on, but I think it's extremely helpful advice, because I do think that a lot of people misunderstand what this actually is and what they're supposed to be doing, and what generally provides value, which it's almost hopeful to me to see that what is providing value is what is really benefiting people's SEO strategies, because before, maybe that wasn't necessarily the case, and I think that if anything, that's a good turn to catch up with maybe this trickery that's been happening in the SEO world for so long.
Yeah, honesty and transparency wins, right? Nothing bad with that. So I think for so many years it's just been like, oh, how do we trick it? How do we do this?
Mm-hmm.
And people just get hit ban, and what's the next trick? So we'll stop doing that.
Like, short-term strategies aren't working, so how about we make it an actual something, a real plan that isn't tricking anything, but actually is just made up of hard work.
Yeah, I mean, imagine saying, hey, I want my brand of my company to be a short-term play. Like, it's no. If you're trying to get rich quick, maybe.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You can make your agency sell it, I guess. If that's your goal, I suppose. But those are the ones that burn people. So yeah, I think it's a turn for the best of seeing that this is a trend that's happening more. It's not less trickery, more transparency.
There you go.
Well, thank you, Kevin, so much for joining me today. I think this was absolutely lovely. I think we ended on a really good, wholesome note of SEO strategies. So I really appreciate you joining me today. This was very enlightening, and I know that our audience will get as much out of it that I did. So thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening. We'd be nothing without you. I hope you enjoy this and other episodes, and have a lovely day. Bye.